that's one of the aspects I love about integrative medicine too, is that I can actually speak to patients from experience. Because like you said, I can go and make these changes. I can try out intermittent fasting. I can try adding something else to my life, changing my diet, getting different exercise, doing mind-body medicine activities. So when I speak to patients about it, I can actually come from a place of experience.
Welcome to the Learn Skin podcast with me, Dr. Raja.
And me, Dr. Hadar, where we discuss all things skin.
Join us as we delve into the art and science of skin health in today's episode.
Hey, Raja, can you say the thing I told you to tell them?
Of course. We are board-certified dermatologists. This podcast is meant for educational and informational purposes only and is not considered medical advice, nor does it serve as a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. All opinions shared do not express the views of Learn Health, Inc. Let's get to the good stuff.
Hey, Raja, how are you today?
I'm doing well. You know, I've been deep in thought today. I was just thinking, who has the best mustache in all of dermatology?
That's a great thought. I know it's not me, and I know it's not you. And really, I just know you and Dr. Daveluy. So it's really all the people I know in the world. So if I have to think about that, statistically speaking, and really just applying the scientific method here, I'm going to have to say Dr. Steve Daveluy. But, that guy who, seemed to be everywhere you go, a master clinician, an educator, really a great friend. Can never find him. Do you know where he is?
The man, the mustache, the legend. I will tell you, he is a renaissance man in terms of integrative dermatology, integrative medicine. We are super excited to have Dr. Steve Daveluy as part of our podcast today. He's a professor and program director at Wayne State University in the Department of Dermatology out in Detroit. I think he'll tell us he lives across the border in Canada and makes the trip into the US every day. So he's very dedicated to his craft. Steve, welcome to the podcast. We are super excited to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. I need you guys as my hype men everywhere I go. Like, I'm ready now. I feel great. I feel really super pumped.
We got to come up
Yes.
with the integrative bras or something like that.
Yes.
And folks, Steve has been now co-chair for the Integrative Dermatology Symposium for the last few years, but really been part of our journey together from pretty much very, very early on. And it has been really an honor to have him as a colleague and a friend. And we thought today maybe we could celebrate you, Steve, joining us at the Integrative Dermatology Symposium and going through some of your experiences.
Yes, I am happy to do it. Because like you said, I missed the very first Integrative Derm Symposium. But then once I heard about it, I came to the second one. And like you said, Hadar, I was full on all the way in, got involved, now worked my way up to co-chairing the event. And I learned something new every year. I have something to bring home every year. I feel like I change something in my own life each year, and then I have new things to bring my patients. So I thought, what better opportunity to come on and talk about some of the things that have really changed my practice, changed my life, things that I learned from the IDS.
Can I just say, isn't that so cool about integrative medicine? It's not just about changing things for our patients or finding new evidence-based therapies that we can integrate in. It's that we also change our lives, isn't it? Like we also start to embody the whole integrative movement. Like I've changed so many things about how I do personally because of this. So I love hearing that that was part of your journey.
Yeah, and that's one of the aspects I love about integrative medicine too, is that I can actually speak to patients from experience. Because like you said, I can go and make these changes. I can try out intermittent fasting. I can try adding something else to my life, changing my diet, getting different exercise, doing mind-body medicine activities. So when I speak to patients about it, I can actually come from a place of experience. I try to do it as much as I can with other things, but fortunately, I don't have a disease that requires a biologic medication or any other things. I have the residents practice on me with some cosmetic stuff because, I need to talk to my patients about that. That's the sole reason I have them inject me with botulinum toxin every few months.
That's the only reason. The
Only reason.
Only reason. Education first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the things we do for our craft. Well, Steve, why don't we start with kind of your top tip that you learned and maybe even implemented on yourself through your journey into integrative dermatology?
My top tip, and anybody who has gone out to eat with me for the first time has probably heard me talk about this to the point that if you go out enough with me and new people, you're like, oh, here he goes again. And I believe, I'm trying to remember if I learned this at the first IDS I went to, because I think it was actually the first one I was at, was that you want to try to eat 30 different plants every week. And so the idea behind it is biodiversity is good. You know, you hear about it in the context of plants and animals out in the wild, that if one species starts dwindling, it affects the other species and everything is kind of in balance. You want to have this biodiversity, and our guts are exactly the same. You want all kinds of good, healthy bacteria living in there, making friends with each other, doing all the great things they can do so your immune system works great, your gut works great. And so there's this study from years ago where they had people, they just sort of looked at people's diet and said, all right, what are you eating? And let's look at your overall health. And they found that in people who ate 30 different plants a week, they had a lower risk of obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's. They had more short chain fatty acid fermenters, which are your good bacteria, less antibiotic resistance genes were in their gut bacteria, and they just had better overall health with eating 30 plants a week.
Well, the follow up question on that, as I'm sure you get in every meal, is how do you get to 30?
Right? It sounds like an impossible task, but there are some key things, because this is one of those things that I definitely integrated into my life. So a few of my sort of shortcut, not even shortcuts, but key points are, don't forget that seeds and nuts count. So I always have mixed nuts at home and try to a couple times a week eat a fistful. And, you know, you start throwing in cashews and walnuts and pecans and peanuts and all the different nuts, and you've got a Brazil nuts, you've already got a few plants. And then seeds are great. I've got pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, chia seeds. I put chia seeds on everything. I keep chia seeds at work. I keep chia seeds at home. I throw them on everything: salads, soups,
They taste
lasagna.
so good. They taste so good.
Right? The only thing I don't love about chia seeds, and I've grown to love it, is how they kind of get stuck in your teeth and then you have to get them out a little bit, but they puff up a little and come out eventually.
Yeah, see, it's like you get another meal like about 10, 15 minutes later, right? So
Right?
it's kind of cool.
And then whenever I go out to eat, that's kind of how I pick my meal now, is I go, okay, which one of these meal options has the most plants I haven't eaten this week? And like, we never have eggplant at home. We don't cook eggplant. We don't buy eggplant. So I end up eating quite a bit of eggplant when I go out to eat, because I'm like, oh, I haven't had eggplant this week. Let's go for that.
That's awesome. And I think one of the reasons that this is helpful is because it makes you become creative about food and not just eat, whatever is in the kitchen. You kind of have to think about it. And the moment you start thinking about it, you become creative. And when you go to the store, you think about it and you'll get some other foods and really try different foods, which will lead to that biodiversity you were talking about. Is it expensive?
It fits in our budget pretty well. You know, I know it can be hard for people buying fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, but I think hopefully all the listeners know, but if you don't, frozen vegetables and frozen fruit are as close as you can get to fresh, and usually actually sort of fresher than the ones that are quote unquote fresh at the grocery store, because they freeze them right away. And so all those kind of healthy, freshly picked nutrients are locked in there, versus, you know, the quote unquote fresh things that have to be shipped to the grocery store before you even get to them. So frozen things are an option, and you can get some really good like vegetable medleys or even mixed berries that you can then throw in like a healthy smoothie with some soy milk to get your protein and your plant-based milk in there. So I think there's a lot of affordable ways. We go to the bulk food store too. That's where we get our nuts, our seeds, a lot of dried fruits. I love goji berries. They're like one of those superfoods with lots of healthy antioxidants. I don't even know what a regular goji berry looks like, because I always just get dried goji berries that look like little red raisins. So I probably would walk right past them if I saw them on the shelf. But there are some good creative ways, because I know that's always a challenge, is that a lot of times the unhealthy food is a lot cheaper, you know, and easier to come by. But you can kind of get creative. And like you said, just really thinking about your food and what you're eating and how you're making the choices. And the nice thing with frozen too is sometimes you get stuck eating the same foods throughout the week because you have your leftovers because you made too much. So then you end up kind of eating the same thing again and again. So the nice thing with something like frozen vegetables is you can cook some up and you don't have to sort of It's not like when you buy a whole head of lettuce and a whole thing of broccoli, and then you're like, I got to cook this before it goes bad. You've got them so you can kind of access them when you need to, and stir fry them up or add a little bit of this or that.
Right. And then really you have your dessert, which is a fresh fruit, and you can buy a few, and those you don't have to buy huge amounts. So you can buy a couple apples here, some grapefruit, tangerines, whatever it is that you like. Also legumes count, all right? So you
Yes.
can get a bag of beans is like $1.50, and lentils, I love lentils. So all this great, amazing stuff that you can buy. It's not very expensive. And like I said, you can cook them in bulk once a week and kind of keep that and then spice it up as you go through the week with different vegetables. Well, I think we covered that point. We spent at least 30 seconds on this. Okay. So what is the other thing you learned in your journey through the integrative dermatology world?
So one of the things that came up in a lot of talks is the importance of fiber in your diet. And if you're going to those
Yes.
30 plants a week, you're going to get some fiber in there, but most Americans do not get the recommended amount of fiber. They get about half the fiber that they're supposed to per day. And fiber is just my best friend. It's another thing I can't stop talking about. And fiber is one of those things where if you increase the fiber in your diet, you will feel better. Going to the bathroom will be a different experience for you. At the risk of being a little oversharing and sounding a little too crass, I tell people now when I go to the bathroom, it's like a dog. The dog just squats, goes, it's done. If you have enough fiber in your diet, that's what your bowel movements are like. You just sit down, go, you're done. The whole thing is over in like a minute. And you're not going to get hemorrhoids the way that people sitting there struggling on the toilet get hemorrhoids.
It's the social media, Steve. It's the social media that holds people in there.
Right, right. I heard a very funny joke, and I can't remember the comedian who said, "Words with friends is a social media tool to know when your friends are pooping."
Oh my gosh. The other thing is TikTok and Instagram probably lead to hemorrhoids. Don't
Yes.
call it a cause. I'm just calling it an association.
Right. There's just a correlation. We don't know. We don't know yet.
And speaking of causation, why is having fiber in your diet so good for us?
So it kind of ties back in with that first point of feeding your good, healthy gut bacteria. That's what fiber does. That's what those bacteria want. You don't digest it. Like we can't eat the fiber. So it moves through the GI tract and feeds all these wonderful, healthy bacteria that love it. And then you have a really healthy gut barrier. So, a topic that comes up a lot, and we've talked about it at IDS year after year, is the leaky gut. So, this concept that you're supposed to have a nice gut full of healthy bacteria, giving you all these short chain fatty acids and healthy things to help keep you going. And then this nice thick mucus layer, and then your intestinal lining. So that way you've got this barrier between you and the outside world, which in the case of your gut is like in the lumen in the inside of the gut. But when you don't have healthy bacteria and you don't have a good mucous membrane because you don't have a healthy diet and you're eating things that are causing bad bacteria to grow better, like too much meat, not enough fiber, then your gut can start to leak and those unhealthy antigens from the bacteria get into your circulation or get exposed to your immune system and sort of trigger this inflammation and all these issues that you can have. So that fiber is really central to it. I will say, if you're listening right now and you're like, oh, you're right, I only get the average American 15 grams a day and I should get 25 to 30 grams or even more a day, don't change too quickly. Let it be a gradual process, because if you change too quickly, any kind of major gut change, like I think most of us have had when you travel somewhere and all of a sudden the cuisine is drastically different, those sudden changes in the gut are met with a little bit of irregularity. But if you kind of slowly keep adding fiber, and that's chia seed is my fiber buddy because they're packed with protein and fiber. And like I said, I throw them on everything.
Actually, I remember the gut lining image from the second IDS. I think Raja gave a talk, and I remember him showing this kind of with the mucus layer and without. It was something that really stuck in my brain and really appreciate the learning there. So, what foods are high in fiber, and how do we go about incorporating those into our diet?
If you think about some of the healthy foods, like if you said, what are some health foods? Those tend to be high fiber foods. So whole plants and vegetables. And I should kind of jumping back for a second to that first point about the 30 plants, juicing doesn't count. You need the fiber because that's what feeds the microbiome.
Ooh,
So you
Good
can't,
point.
yes, you can't juice them because then you're throwing away all that healthy fiber. It's okay if you sort of puree or like make a smoothie and put things in there, but you need the fiber. So whole grains, legumes and beans, nuts, seeds, and then fruits and vegetables, leafy things. Like we said, the nuts and seeds are really high in fiber, so they're great. And you can always do a fiber supplement. There's gummies, there's powders that you can mix in. So if you're struggling a little bit to get fiber into your diet, you can always add a little bit that way to kind of supplement your fiber.
When I talk to patients about that, a lot of times I'll say, we need to talk about the F word. And I get their attention and they look at me strange. And then I say fiber. I also like to do what I call the kohlrabi exercise. And I say, because a lot of clinicians say, oh, I don't have time to talk to patients about nutrition and what to do and how to buy and all that. And I say, you know what, small steps, right? So I send my
Mhm.
patients to the vegetable store and I say, go and find something called kohlrabi. And that's your homework until you come back. And kohlrabi is a great vegetable. I grew up eating that a lot in our home. It was, I don't want to say a staple, but it was definitely prevalent in everything that my mom used to cook. And so it's really great. And you can eat it fresh and you can cook it. And it's loaded with fiber and just great kind of snack or part of a meal that you want to do it. But what happens in the process when you start looking for these vegetables, you all of a sudden discover this area in the vegetable store. It's kind of in the back. It's very mystical. There's like mist sometimes, and it's dark and green, and it's almost like this lost forest. But when you go back there, you start realizing, oh my gosh, there's so many of these green things. And that's kind of my trick to get patients reacquainted with stuff that grows from the ground and is loaded with fiber and really healthy, as Steve really nicely described to us. So
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
right. And we live in such a great age where if you're like, how can I add some more fiber to my diet? Have AI help you. Go on and ask it, how can I increase fiber in my diet? Give me some recipes and it's going to help you out. Or like you said, what can I do at the grocery store? So take advantage of technology. Like kohlrabi, I heard about that for the first time at the IDS and I'm like, all right, I'm going out and trying that. And I love root vegetables. Like I'm a big fan of turnip root. If you kind of do half turnip root,
Ooh,
half
yeah.
potatoes and mash them up together, it just tastes like
Ooh,
mashed potatoes. And
it's great stuff.
one of my favorite studies for fiber that really like hits home of how important fiber is melanoma patients who were getting immune checkpoint inhibitors, which basically stimulate your immune system to attack your melanoma. How well the immune checkpoint inhibitor works to destroy your melanoma is directly related to how much fiber is in your diet. So people who had at least 20 grams per day of fiber in their diet, it was considered sufficient. And each time you went up 5 grams of fiber per day, it decreased the risk of progression or death by 30%, which just speaks to that connection. Like your immune system and your gut are so tied together. So when you're giving that healthy fiber to your gut, everything in your body is just going to work better.
Love it. All right. So, number 30, the letter F. We got it. We're moving through your tips, my friend. Give us one more before we have to go.
So another one that has really changed my life because it has helped me to go vegan is the way dairy really affects pathways in our body, and specifically inflammatory pathways. And so we've probably heard before there are some of these connections with dairy and acne, or dairy and inflammation, whey protein and acne. And so it was really fascinating at the IDS to see the scientific pathways like the mTOR pathway that dairy stimulates that actually is the reason that it leads to that inflammation that we see. And I loved it. I think it was Apple Bodemer at one of the talks said, a cow's milk is intended to take a cow from 90 pounds to 900 pounds in a year. So how did we ever think that this would be a healthy thing for us to drink throughout our lifetime? And so switching from dairy to plant-based milk, now I can't even think about going back. Like normal milk just tastes spoiled to me now if I try to drink it and have it. And I feel better. And that's a big one that I talk to my acne patients a lot about, and HS patients. Because for hidradenitis suppurativa, we know there are studies that show a link with dairy and that inflammation. And so I tell them, you know what? Try taking a break from dairy for a couple months. No milk, no cheese, no yogurt, or just all plant-based milk, cheese, and yogurt. See how you feel, see how your acne is doing, see how your HS is doing. And if you aren't sure, then go hog wild and have a ton of it and see if you flare up. And maybe that will be your confirmation. Kind of like when people aren't really sure if their medicine's working, so they stop it and flare up and then realize it was working.
I'm in the same board as you because, when you look at milk and all the different, I mean, look at whey protein, for example, it's probably one of the most inflammatory when it comes to acne. And I'm sure, HS is right there. What do you say to milk alternatives? And let me start by saying, what about this A2 type milk for starters, and then lactose free milk? I mean, people ask about this all the time. And then I'd love for you to comment on the milk alternatives altogether.
I haven't even heard of A2 milk. What is A2 milk?
It's supposed to be less inflammatory, but it has the same amount of other proteins, but it's supposed to be less inflammatory for
Oh,
some
that's
reason.
interesting. It's so funny that they're coming up with these ways to sort of be like, oh, we're making milk healthier. And it's like, just drink soy milk or almond milk or cashew milk or pea protein based milk. Like, I don't know why we're still trying to make cow milk healthier when there's just better alternatives out there. And I'm partially vegan for the health reasons and then partially for the environmental impact. And so I'm not a fan of raising more cows for any reason because it's just not sustainable for our environment and it's already doing damage to it. And that's, like you said, it's tricky when you're sort of trying to tweak something, or like lactose free milk. It's like, well, for some people, they can't tolerate the lactose because it is this foreign sugar that our system is not used to. But a lot of the inflammatory pathways are, like you said, the proteins in the milk, like the whey protein really strongly stimulates these inflammatory pathways. So I recommend people, if you can, switch over to a plant-based milk. They're also a little more convenient when you're shopping because they typically don't need to be refrigerated until they're opened. So you can actually kind of stock up a little bit. So if you're like a doomsday prepper and you're vegan, you can still do it. And it'll probably have a better shelf life and probably a little more enjoyable than buying like powdered milk. You can buy powdered plant-based milks if you want and mix them back up.
Well, the A2 milk is supposed to, by the way, I love your points. The A2 milk, I had a chance to look at it while we were talking. It's the A2 protein variant of beta casein rather than the A1, but you still have the whey. You still have the other stuff in there, the oligosaccharides. So I'm not sure that's actually going to be any less inflammatory. And then when you go buy milk, like, gosh, they have so many different kind of milks now, flaxseed, like you said, oat milk and whatnot. How do you select the best kind of milk alternative? Do you have any tips that you use when you're buying your milk alternative?
I always watch out for the sweetened ones because sometimes they'll
Yeah,
add a
that's a
bunch of
great
sugar.
point.
Yeah, and it's a little bit sneaky because sometimes you're not really sure. Like it doesn't say sweetened; it'll say vanilla or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, right.
Right, so I look for the
Yep.
unsweetened ones because I don't want that extra sugar, and then I'm big on protein, so I like the more protein-rich milks, like soy milk or pea milk, the ones that have protein in them because I look for my milk to be sort of an additional protein during my meal. If you're not crazy about protein, because like Hadar said earlier, now that I started looking at the foods I eat, I'm like, how much fiber is in this? How much protein is in this? How much fiber am I getting in this meal? And it, like, paying attention makes a big difference and it makes you make really good choices. So I'm big on the protein because things like almond milk and cashew milk tend to not have as much protein as something like soy milk. There's a lot of sort of old school myths about soy milk really having problems raising your estrogen, but we've really disproven those myths a lot. They were like case reports of young boys in puberty getting gynecomastia and like too much information, but I'll disclose. I went through like the puberty phase where I almost had like gynecomastia while the hormones were figuring themselves out. It happens, right? Don't blame the soy milk for it. And they've even done studies that show there's no connection with soy milk and breast cancer. In fact, if anything, it's protective against breast cancer because it's phytoestrogens and not the endogenous estrogens that could be associated with it. So people are like, oh, are you worried that you're having too much soy with all that tofu and soy milk? And I'm like, I don't think there is such thing as too much soy.
Well, I love all these tips, and especially the one on watching out for the sweetened ones. And one thing that I would add is try them all. Try them all, see what
Yeah.
you like, because you should have fun with your milk. I'm a coffee drinker, and what I find for me is that soy milk is really great when I want hot kind of coffee or hot beverage. And then I like the almond milk when it's cold. And so
Mm.
I go with that. You have choice with flavors. Well, wow. I can't believe time flew so quickly, Steve. You got us through so much information that's useful. And what I love about it is that you didn't talk to us as a doctor to a patient. You just said what you do. And that happens to just work for your patients. And again, as we started, we said that what makes integrative medicine so cool is that
Mhm.
it impacts the clinician almost just as much as it impacts the patient. And so for those of you who are listening, if you want to hear more from Dr. Daveluy, Dr. Sivamani, and all the gang at the Integrative Dermatology Symposium, well, you can listen to this podcast, but you can also come and hang out with us in person. Come to Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, August 22nd through the 24th. This is the Integrative Dermatology Symposium. Yet again, the place where you go to really learn about how to become a better clinician for your patients and for yourself. Dr. Daveluy, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and for being such a great friend.
Thanks so much for having me, and hopefully I get to see all you listeners at the IDS so you can pick up all these great tips and take them home too.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. But Raja, every time we dive into these conversations, it feels like there's still so much more to uncover.
Exactly, Hadar. That's why I look forward to IDS every year. It's the perfect place to continue exploring the latest in research, sharing ideas, and learning how to apply integrative strategies in real-world dermatology practice.
And this year's theme couldn't be more relevant. Guide your patients towards a healthy biome and optimal skin health. We know that skin health isn't just about treating the surface. It's about understanding the biome and how it connects to the overall health of our patients.
And that's exactly what we'll be tackling at the 8th Integrative Dermatology Symposium happening August 21st through the 24th at the Westin La Paloma Resort and Spa in Tucson, Arizona.
Now, we've got an amazing lineup of expert-led sessions covering key dermatology conditions like eczema, psoriasis, vitiligo, alopecia areata, and melasma, plus insights into how movement, weight loss, and even coca polyphenols can impact your skin health.
Now, who doesn't want some good cocoa polyphenols? I know you do, Hadar. And what really makes IDS special is the interactive format. It's not just about sitting through lectures, and we really make that a point. We'll have real-world case discussions, hands-on workshops, and plenty of opportunities to connect with colleagues who are just as passionate about integrative dermatology as we are.
And folks, let's not forget about the location. The Westin La Paloma Resort and Spa. That's the perfect place to learn and recharge. And you can relax by the waterfalls, stargaze under the Arizona sky, play around a golf or tennis, or unwind at the spa. And of course, we'll have evening receptions where you can catch up with your colleagues and make new connections.
Now, who doesn't want to go stargazing and whisper sweet integrative everythings, not nothings, Hadar, to each other? Now, that sounds like the ideal way to learn, recharge, and connect all in one weekend. And if you haven't already, head over to integrativedermatologysymposium.com to check out all the details and save your spot now.
That's integrativedermatologysymposium.com. And as a special thank you to our podcast listeners, we're excited to offer 15% off your IDS registration. Just use the code podcast15 when you sign up. Simply head over to integrativedermatologysymposium.com to register. We can't wait to see you at IDS 2025 in Tucson, Arizona. Let's take integrative dermatology to the next level together.